Hello, my dear English learners. Welcome back to English Practice with Julia. I'm Julia, and I'm truly happy you are here with me today. If you're new here, welcome. Please feel comfortable. You don't need perfect English to be here. You only need a little curiosity, a little patience, and a little time to practice. And I will guide you step by step. Every day we share a new English learning lesson, so you can keep improving your English little by little without pressure and without feeling overwhelmed. Today, imagine that this lesson is simply a relaxed conversation between friends. Just you and me, learning together, exploring English together, slowly and naturally. In this session, we will train your listening, your speaking, and even the way you think in English. So if you want to get the most from this lesson, you may want to keep a pen and paper nearby, not because you must, but because writing things down often helps your brain remember new language more easily. Now, today, we are going to explore something very important for anyone who wants to sound more confident and natural in English. We are going to talk about how to speak more advanced English. And don't worry, advanced English does not mean complicated English. It simply means expressing your thoughts more clearly, more naturally, and more confidently, the way fluent speakers do in everyday life. Many English learners know thousands of words, but still feel nervous when they speak. Sometimes you may know the grammar. You may understand conversations, but when it is your turn to speak, the words don't come out smoothly. If that has ever happened to you, please know that you are not alone. It happens to millions of English learners around the world. The good news is that advanced English is not about memorizing difficult vocabulary or using long, complicated sentences. Real advanced English is about expressing simple ideas in a clear, natural, and confident way. It is about choosing the right words, connecting ideas smoothly, and sounding relaxed when you speak. In today's lesson, we will explore how everyday conversations can become more expressive, more descriptive, and more natural. You will hear many examples from daily life situations like talking about your day, sharing your opinion, describing experiences, reacting to surprises, explaining problems, and telling small stories about your life. As we go through these examples, you will notice small changes that make a big difference. Sometimes it will be the way sentences connect. Sometimes it will be a useful phrase. Sometimes it will be a more natural way to express the same idea. And slowly, step by step, you will begin to feel how advanced English flows in real conversations. We will also practice together because learning English is not only about listening, it is also about using the language yourself. During this lesson, I will invite you to repeat sentences, imagine situations, and create your own responses. These small practice moments will help your brain become faster and more comfortable when using English. So while you listen, don't worry about understanding every single word perfectly. Just relax. Listen carefully. Notice the rhythm of the sentences. And allow your brain to absorb the patterns of natural English. With regular practice, your confidence will grow, and speaking English will start to feel more natural every day. Before we continue, may I ask you a small favor? If you enjoy learning English in this calm and friendly way, please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. This helps you stay consistent with your learning, and it also helps this channel continue creating helpful English lessons for learners around the world. Thank you so much for your support. All right, take a slow, comfortable breath. Relax your shoulders. Keep your mind open and curious. And let's begin our journey into speaking more advanced, natural, and confident English together. Now let's start with a simple thought. Many learners believe that advanced English means using difficult vocabulary. But in reality, advanced speakers often use very simple words. The difference is how they combine those words to express richer ideas. For example, imagine someone asks you about your day. A basic answer might be, "My day was busy." That sentence is correct, and it communicates the message clearly. But advanced English often adds small details that make the message more vivid and more human. You might say something like, "My day was pretty busy. I had several things to finish. And by the afternoon, I felt a little tired, but it was still a productive day." Notice something interesting here. The vocabulary is still simple: busy, things, finish, tired, productive. None of these words are extremely difficult, but the sentence feels more natural because the speaker is sharing thoughts the way people actually talk in real life. Let's look at another situation. Imagine a friend asks you about a movie you watched yesterday. A very basic answer might be, "The movie was good." Again, this is correct English, but fluent speakers usually add a little more feeling to their description. You might say, "The movie was actually really good. I didn't expect to enjoy it that much, but the story kept getting more interesting. And by the end, I was completely involved in it." When people speak advanced English, they often expand their ideas naturally like this. They explain their reaction, they describe their experience, and they allow the conversation to feel more alive. Let's try a small practice moment together. Imagine someone asks you, "How was your morning today?" Instead of answering with just one short sentence, try to expand the idea. You might say something like, "My morning was quite calm, actually. I woke up a little earlier than usual, made myself a cup of coffee, and spent some quiet time planning the rest of my day." Now pause for a moment and imagine your own morning. Think about what you did, how you felt, and try to describe it using 2 or 3 connected sentences. Speak slowly and allow your thoughts to flow naturally in English. Maybe your answer sounds something like, "My morning was a bit busy. I had to prepare for work, and I was running a little late. But once I arrived, everything started going smoothly." Or maybe your morning was peaceful, and you might say, "My morning was very relaxing. I opened the window, felt the fresh air, and spent a few minutes just enjoying the quiet before starting my day." Do you see what is happening here? You are not just giving information. You are sharing an experience. And that is one of the most important habits of advanced English speakers. Instead of short mechanical answers, they naturally tell small pieces of their story. And this makes conversations more interesting, more expressive, and more human. Let's continue exploring this idea together because the more you practice expanding your thoughts, the more fluent your English will begin to sound. Imagine a colleague asks you, "How was your weekend?" A simple answer could be, "My weekend was good," but an advanced response often adds small personal details. You might say, "My weekend was really nice. I spent some time with my family, watched a couple of movies, and also managed to relax a bit after a long week." Or perhaps your weekend was more active, and you might say, "My weekend was quite busy actually. I had several errands to run, met a friend for lunch, and by Sunday evening I felt pleasantly tired." Notice how these responses sound more natural because they include small moments of daily life. Now let's practice again. Imagine someone asks you, "What do you usually do in the evening?" Try to answer in 2 or 3 connected sentences. You might say, "In the evening, I usually try to relax a little. Sometimes I watch something interesting online. Sometimes I read a few pages of a book, and occasionally I just listen to music and let my mind rest." When you practice describing simple routines like this, your brain becomes more comfortable connecting ideas in English. And this is the secret to advanced speaking. It is not about speaking faster. It is about speaking more naturally. Fluent speakers allow their ideas to grow. They explain their feelings. They describe experiences. And they use everyday language in a flexible way. As we continue this lesson, we will explore many more ways to expand your thoughts, express opinions, describe situations, and share experiences in natural English. So stay relaxed, keep listening carefully, and when I invite you to practice, take a moment to speak your own sentences out loud. Even if you make small mistakes, that is completely normal because every sentence you speak is helping your brain grow stronger in English. And slowly, little by little, you will begin to notice something wonderful. Speaking English will start to feel easier, smoother, and much more natural. Let's begin with a very important idea about advanced English. Many learners believe that advanced English means using difficult vocabulary or very long, complicated sentences. But in real life, fluent speakers often use simple words. They just combine those words in a smoother, more expressive, and more natural way. That is the real a secret of sounding advanced in English. It is not about making English complicated. It is about making English flow. Think about a normal daily conversation. Imagine someone asks you, "How was your day?" A beginner might answer very quickly and very simply. "My day was good." This is correct, and there is nothing wrong with it. But advanced English usually adds a little more thought, a little more feeling, and a little more connection between ideas. For example, a more natural answer could be, "My day was actually pretty good. I had a few things to finish in the morning, but once I completed them, the rest of the day felt quite relaxed." Notice something interesting here. None of the words are extremely difficult, but the sentence feels more complete, more descriptive, and more human. Now imagine another situation. You meet a friend and they ask, "What did you do today?" Many learners answer like this: "I worked, I ate lunch, and I watched a movie." Again, this is correct, but it sounds a little mechanical, like a list of activities. Advanced English usually connects those ideas in a smoother way. You might say something like, "Today was quite productive, actually. I spent most of the morning working on a few important tasks. Then I took a break for lunch, and later in the evening, I relaxed by watching a movie." When you speak like this, the listener can imagine your day more clearly. This is an important habit that advanced speakers develop. They describe experiences, not just actions. They explain what happened, how it happened, and sometimes how they felt about it. Let's practice this idea together. Imagine someone asks you a simple question. How was your morning? Or instead of answering with only 2 or 3 words, try to expand the idea. Try to create a small story about your morning. For example, you might say, "My morning was quite peaceful. I woke up a little earlier than usual, made myself a cup of coffee, and spent some time planning the rest of my day." Do you see how that sentence flows naturally? It sounds relaxed, and it allows the listener to imagine the moment. Now take a moment and imagine your own morning today. Think about the first thing you did after waking up. Did you check your phone? Did you make breakfast? Did you rush somewhere? Or was your morning calm and slow? Now try to describe your morning in English. Speak slowly and allow your ideas to connect. You might say something like, "My morning was a bit busy. I had to prepare for work, and I was running slightly late, but after I arrived, everything started going smoothly." Or maybe your morning was very calm, and you might say, "My morning was very relaxing. I opened the window, enjoyed the fresh air, and spent a few quiet minutes thinking about my plans for the day." When you practice speaking like this, your brain begins to organize thoughts in English instead of translating from another language. And this is a very important step toward advanced fluency. Another important part of advanced English is learning how to express opinions naturally. In daily conversations, people often share what they think, what they prefer, or what they feel about something. Imagine a friend asks you, "Do you like working in the morning or at night?" A very simple answer could be, "I like working in the morning." But advanced speakers often add a little explanation. You might say, "Personally, I prefer working in the morning because my mind feels clearer and I can focus more easily at that time." Or maybe you are the opposite, and you might say, "Actually, I tend to work better at night because everything becomes quieter and I can concentrate without interruptions." Do you notice something important here? The sentence includes a small reason, and that reason makes the answer sound more thoughtful. Let's practice this idea together. Imagine someone asks you, "Do you prefer coffee or tea?" Instead of answering with just one word, try to expand your answer. You could say, "I usually prefer coffee, especially in the morning, because it helps me wake up and start the day with more energy." Or perhaps tea is your favorite, and you might say, "I actually prefer tea because it feels lighter and more relaxing." These small explanations make your English sound much more natural. Now let's talk about another skill that helps learners speak advanced English, and that skill is describing feelings and reactions. Many conversations in daily life involve emotions. People talk about things they enjoyed, things that surprised them, or things that made them tired. For example, imagine someone asks you about a movie you watched yesterday. A simple answer might be, "The movie was good." But advanced speakers often describe their reaction in more detail. You might say something like, "The movie was surprisingly good. I didn't expect to enjoy it that much, but the story kept getting more interesting as it continued." Or perhaps the movie was disappointing, and you could say, "Honestly, the movie started well, but after a while the story became a little predictable." These kinds of descriptions help you sound more natural because they show your personal experience. Now let's practice describing reactions together. Imagine you just visited a restaurant for the first time. A friend asks you, "How was the restaurant?" You might answer, "The restaurant was really nice. The atmosphere was calm, and the food tasted fresh and delicious." Or maybe the experience was not perfect, and you might say, "The restaurant looked beautiful, but the service was a bit slow." These small details make your English richer, and they also make conversations more interesting. Another important element of advanced English is the ability to connect ideas smoothly. In real conversations, people rarely speak in completely separate sentences. They usually connect thoughts together. For example, instead of saying, "I was tired. I went to sleep early," you might say, "I was quite tired, so I decided to go to sleep early." Or instead of saying, "I finished my work. I went for a walk," you might say, "After finishing my work, I went for a short walk." These small connections make your speech sound more natural. Now let's practice connecting ideas. Imagine you are talking about your evening. You could say, "After dinner, I usually relax for a while. Sometimes I watch something interesting, and sometimes I just listen to music." Notice how the ideas flow one after another. Now imagine your own evening routine. Try to describe it using connected sentences. You might say, "In the evening, I like to slow down a little. I usually prepare dinner. Then I spend some time reading or watching something relaxing." When you practice like this regularly, your sentences will begin to feel smoother and more natural. Another habit of advanced English speakers is telling small stories about daily experiences. These stories don't have to be dramatic. Even simple moments from everyday life can become interesting conversations. For example, imagine you are telling a friend about something that happened earlier today. You might say, "Something funny happened this morning. I was looking for my phone everywhere, and after searching for several minutes, I realized it was already in my pocket." Small stories like this make conversations lively. Let's practice creating a small story. Think about something that happened recently, maybe something funny, something surprising, or something slightly annoying. Now try to describe that moment in English. For example, you might say, "Yesterday, I went to a grocery store, and when I reached the cashier, I suddenly realized I had forgotten my wallet at home." Or maybe something pleasant happened, and you could say, "Yesterday evening, I met an old friend unexpectedly, and we ended up talking for almost an hour." These small stories help your brain practice organizing events in English. As you continue practicing advanced English, remember something important. Fluency is not built in one day. It grows slowly through daily exposure, daily listening, and daily speaking. Every time you describe your day, every time you explain an opinion, every time you tell a small story, your English becomes stronger. So don't worry about making mistakes. Mistakes are simply signs that your brain is learning. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and most importantly, keep enjoying the process of learning English. Because when learning feels relaxed and natural, progress becomes much faster. And as we continue this lesson together, we will explore even more ways to expand your thoughts, express ideas clearly, and speak English with greater confidence. As we continue our journey towards speaking more advanced English, it is helpful to remember something very simple but very powerful. Fluent speakers do not rush their thoughts. They allow their ideas to grow naturally. They pause. They connect feelings with experiences. And they speak in a relaxed rhythm that sounds human and comfortable. Many learners feel pressure to speak quickly because they believe speed equals fluency. But in reality, clarity is far more important than speed. When you slow down slightly, your brain has time to organize ideas, and your sentences begin to sound more natural, more thoughtful, and more advanced. Imagine you are talking with someone about your daily routine. A beginner might say, I wake up, I go to work, I come home. This communicates the idea, but it feels a little robotic, like a list of actions. An advanced speaker might say something like, my mornings usually start quite calmly. I wake up, spend a few minutes getting ready for the day, and then I head to work. Notice how the sentence feels smoother. The speaker is not just listing actions. They are describing the experience. Now imagine someone asks you, what do you usually do after work? Instead of answering quickly with something short like, I watch TV, try expanding the idea. You could say, after work, I usually try to relax a little. Sometimes I watch something interesting, and other times I just sit quietly for a while to clear my mind. These small expansions are one of the easiest ways to sound more advanced in English because they show that you are thinking in the language instead of translating word by word. Let's practice this idea together. Think about something simple, like how you usually spend your weekends. Instead of saying, I rest on weekends, you might say, on weekends, I usually try to slow down and recharge. Sometimes I meet friends, sometimes I watch a movie, and sometimes I just enjoy some quiet time at home. Notice how the sentence flows naturally from one idea to the next. This flow is what makes speech sound fluent. Now take a moment and imagine your own weekend routine. Speak it out loud if possible, and try to connect your ideas gently. You might say, my weekends are usually quite relaxing. I like to sleep a little longer in the morning. And later, I spend time doing things I enjoy. Or perhaps your weekends are busy. And you might say, my weekends are often quite active. I try to finish errands, meet friends, and sometimes explore new places in the city. Practicing these small descriptions trains your brain to organize thoughts naturally in English. Another powerful skill that advanced speakers use is explaining reasons. In everyday conversations, people often explain why they think something or why they prefer something. For example, imagine someone asks you, "Why do you enjoy learning English?" A short answer might be, "Because it is useful." That answer is correct, but advanced speakers often give a little more explanation. You might say, "I enjoy learning English because it allows me to communicate with people from many different countries, and it also helps me understand new ideas and cultures." When you give reasons like this, your sentences become richer and more expressive. Let's practice together. Imagine someone asks you, "Why do you like watching movies?" You could say, "I enjoy watching movies because they help me relax, and they also allow me to experience different stories and emotions." Or maybe your answer is different, and you might say, "I like watching movies because they inspire my imagination and help me escape from everyday stress for a while." Do you notice how the explanation makes the sentence sound more complete? Another common situation in daily life is talking about plans. Advanced speakers often describe plans in a natural and relaxed way. For example, someone might ask, "What are you planning to do tomorrow?" Instead of saying, "I will work tomorrow," you might say, "Art, tomorrow I'm planning to focus on a few tasks in the morning, and then later in the day, I hope to relax a little." Or perhaps your plan is more exciting, and you might say, "Tomorrow I'm planning to meet a friend for lunch, and after that, we might explore a new cafe." These small details make conversations more engaging. Now imagine your plans for tomorrow. Think about what you might do. Try describing it slowly in English. You might say, "Tomorrow I want to start the day a little earlier, finish some important work, and then give myself some time to rest in the evening." Practicing these everyday topics is extremely powerful because most conversations in life involve simple daily situations. Another useful skill in advanced English is expressing uncertainty or possibility. In real life, we often talk about things that might happen or on things we are not completely sure about. For example, imagine you are talking about the weather. Instead of saying, "It will rain," you might say, "It might rain later today. The sky looks a little cloudy." Or imagine you are making plans with a friend. You might say, "We might go out for dinner tonight, but we haven't decided yet." Using expressions like might, maybe, probably, and I think help your English sound natural and conversational. Let's practice this together. Imagine someone asks you, "What will you do this evening?" Instead of giving a fixed answer, you might say, "I'm not completely sure yet. I might watch a movie, or maybe I'll read something relaxing." Or perhaps you have a stronger idea, and you could say, "I'll probably spend the evening catching up on some work, but later I hope to relax a little." These expressions now reflect real life thinking. Another important aspect of advanced English is reacting naturally in conversations. When someone tells you something interesting, surprising, or funny, your reaction helps keep the conversation alive. For example, if someone tells you they traveled somewhere beautiful, you might respond by saying, "That sounds amazing. I've always wanted to visit a place like that." Or if someone tells you something unexpected, you might say, "Really? I didn't expect that." These small reactions make conversations feel alive and spontaneous. Let's imagine a small conversation. A friend says, "I tried cooking a new recipe yesterday." A natural response might be, "That sounds interesting. How did it turn out?" If the friend replies, "It was actually really good," you might continue, "That's great. Maybe you should cook it again on sometime." These reactions help conversations flow naturally. Another habit of advanced speakers is describing experiences with a sense of time. They explain when something happened and how events unfolded. For example, instead of saying, "I met my friend yesterday," you might say, "Yesterday afternoon, I met a friend I hadn't seen in a long time, and we spent a couple of hours catching up." Or instead of saying, "I finished a project," you might say, "After working on it for several days, I finally finished the project yesterday." These details create a clearer picture in the listener's mind. Let's practice telling a small experience. Imagine something you did recently, maybe yesterday. Try describing it slowly in English. You might say, "Yesterday evening, I decided to take a short walk. The air felt fresh, and it helped me clear my mind. After a long day." Or perhaps your experience was different, and you might say, "Yesterday, I spent some time organizing my room, and by the time I finished, everything felt much more comfortable." These small descriptions make your English sound vivid and natural. As you continue learning advanced English, try to remember this important idea. Speaking is not only about grammar, it is about sharing experiences, thoughts, and emotions. When you allow yourself to describe moments from your life, your English becomes more authentic. And with each conversation, each sentence, and each small story you share, your confidence grows. So keep practicing these patterns, describing experiences, explaining reasons, sharing opinions, and reacting naturally. Over time, these habits will become automatic, and one day you will suddenly realize something surprising. You are no longer trying to speak English, you are simply speaking. Now that we have explored how to expand ideas, explain reasons, and describe daily experiences, let's move a little deeper into something that truly makes English sound advanced, and that is the ability to express thoughts with subtle meaning. In everyday conversations, people rarely speak in extremely direct sentences. Instead, they soften their language, they add small expressions, and they allow their ideas to feel more natural and thoughtful. For example, imagine someone asks you if you enjoyed a restaurant. A very direct answer might be, "The food was bad." This sentence is clear, but it may sound a little harsh in normal conversation. Advanced speakers often soften the message slightly. You might say, "The food was okay, but it wasn't exactly what I expected." Or perhaps, "The restaurant looked beautiful, but the food was a little disappointing." These softer expressions help conversations feel more polite and balanced. Now imagine another situation. Someone asks you about a long meeting at work. A simple answer might be, "The meeting was boring," but you could also express it more naturally. You might say, "The meeting felt a bit long, and after a while, it became difficult to stay focused. This style of speaking sounds more thoughtful and more natural in many conversations. Let's practice this together. Imagine someone asks you, "How was the movie you watched yesterday?" Instead of saying, "It was bad," you might say, "The movie started quite well, but later the story became a little slow." Or perhaps you enjoyed it, and you might say, "The movie was actually quite enjoyable, especially the ending." When you speak like this, your English sounds balanced, expressive, and mature. Another important element of advanced English is learning how to express opinions in a calm and confident way. People share opinions in conversations every day, whether they are talking about books, movies, food, work, or even life decisions. For example, imagine someone asks you what you think about learning new skills. You might say, "Personally, I think learning new skills is always valuable because it keeps the mind active and opens new opportunities." Or maybe your opinion is slightly different, and you could say, "I believe learning new skills can be challenging sometimes, but the effort is usually worth it." Notice how the sentence begins with a phrase like "personally" or "I believe." These small expressions help your opinion now sound natural and conversational. Let's practice this idea together. Imagine someone asks you, "What do you think about waking up early in the morning?" You might answer, "Personally, I think waking up early can be very productive because the morning hours are usually quiet and peaceful." Or perhaps you prefer sleeping longer, and you might say, "To be honest, I'm not always a morning person, but when I wake up early, I do feel more organized during the day." These types of answers show personality, and they make conversations feel genuine. Another useful skill in advanced English is describing changes over time. Many conversations involve talking about how things were in the past, how they are now, and how they might be in the future. For example, imagine someone asks you about your English learning journey. You might say, "When I first started learning English, it felt quite difficult, but over time I became more comfortable with it." Or perhaps you could say, "At the beginning, I struggled to understand conversations, but gradually my listening skills improved." These sentences show progress, and they help the listener understand your experience. Let's practice describing change. Think about something you have improved in your life. Maybe learning English, maybe a hobby, maybe a skill. You might say, "At first, it was not easy for me, but after practicing regularly, I started to feel more confident." Or perhaps, "In the beginning, everything felt confusing, but little by little, it began to make sense." These expressions make your speech sound reflective and natural. Another powerful habit of advanced speakers is the ability to describe small details. When you add details to your sentences, your listener can imagine the situation more clearly. For example, imagine you are describing a walk you took yesterday. Instead of saying, "I went for a walk," you might say, "Yesterday evening, I went for a quiet walk. The weather was cool, and the streets felt peaceful." Those small details create a vivid image. Now imagine you are describing a cafe you visited. You might say, "The cafe had a warm atmosphere. Soft music was playing. and the smell of fresh coffee filled the room. When you include details like this, your English becomes more expressive. Let's practice describing a place together. Think about a place you like, maybe a park, a cafe, or your favorite room at home. Try describing it slowly in English. You might say, "There is a small park near my home. The trees are tall. And in the evening, the air feels calm and refreshing." Or perhaps, "My favorite place to relax is a quiet corner in my room where I can read or listen to music." These descriptions help you practice visual thinking in English. Another important skill for advanced speaking is asking thoughtful questions. Good conversations involve not only speaking, but also asking questions that keep the discussion alive. For example, imagine someone tells you they recently traveled somewhere. Instead of simply saying, "That's nice," you might ask, "What was the most memorable part of your trip?" Or you might say, "What did you enjoy most about that place?" These questions show interest, and they encourage deeper conversations. Let's imagine a short conversation. A friend says, "I started learning how to cook recently." You might respond, "That sounds interesting. What kind of dishes have you tried so far?" If the friend says, "I tried making pasta," you could continue, "How did it turn out?" These small questions make conversations flow smoothly. Another skill advanced speakers use is reflecting on experiences. They often talk about what they learned, what they realized, or what they discovered. For example, you might say, "After traveling alone for the first time, I realized how important confidence is." Or, "After practicing English for several months, I noticed that my listening improved a lot." These reflections add depth to your conversations. Let's practice reflecting on something you learned recently. You might say, "Recently, I realized that practicing a little every day is more effective than studying for many hours at once." Or perhaps, "I discovered that listening to English conversations helps me understand natural speech better." These reflections make your English sound thoughtful and mature. As you continue practicing advanced English, remember that fluency grows through experience, through conversation, and through curiosity. Each time you describe a moment, explain an idea, or share a thought, you strengthen your ability to communicate clearly. So keep exploring, keep expressing your thoughts, and most importantly, keep enjoying the process of learning. Because language learning is not only about words, it is about connecting with people, sharing experiences, and understanding the world in new ways. And the more you practice these habits, the more natural your English will begin to sound. As we continue developing the ability to speak advanced English, let's explore something that fluent speakers do very naturally. They describe their thoughts while they are thinking. Instead of only giving final answers, they allow the listener to follow their thinking process. And this makes their speech sound very natural and human. For example, imagine someone asks you a question like, "Do you enjoy learning new things?" A short answer might be, "Yes, I do." But advanced speakers often expand the idea while they think. You might say something like, "Yes, I really enjoy learning new things, especially when the topic is interesting, because it makes me feel curious and motivated. Or you might say, I think I enjoy learning new things, although sometimes it can feel challenging, but the process is still rewarding. Notice how the speaker is not rushing. They are allowing the idea to develop gradually. Let's practice this thinking style together. Imagine someone asks, what kind of music do you enjoy? Instead of giving a very short answer, try letting your thoughts grow naturally. You might say, that's an interesting question. I usually enjoy calm music, especially when I want to relax in the evening. But sometimes I also like energetic songs when I need motivation. This style of speaking feels very conversational. Another important habit of advanced speakers is describing feelings connected to experiences. Many conversations become more meaningful when we explain not only what happened, but also how we felt about it. For example, imagine you recently met an old friend. Instead of simply saying, I met my friend yesterday, you might say, yesterday I met a friend I hadn't seen in a long time, and it felt really nice to catch up and talk about old memories. Or perhaps you visited a new place, and you could say, I visited a new cafe yesterday, and I was pleasantly surprised by how comfortable the atmosphere felt. When you include emotions like this, your speech becomes richer and more expressive. Let's practice describing emotions. Think about something pleasant that happened recently. You might say, yesterday evening, I took a quiet walk outside, and it felt refreshing after a long day. Or maybe something unexpected happened. And you could say, I received a message from an old friend, and it made me smile. These emotional details help create stronger communication. Another element of advanced English is learning how to explain situations clearly. In daily conversations, people often describe problems, solutions, or small challenges. For example, imagine you had a busy day. Instead of saying, my day was busy, you might say, my day was quite busy. I had several things to finish, and for a while it felt a little overwhelming, but eventually I managed to complete everything. This sentence explains the situation more clearly. Let's practice describing a challenge. Think about a small difficulty you experienced recently, maybe something at work, something at home, or something while learning English. You might say, earlier today I had trouble concentrating because there were many distractions around me. Or perhaps, I spent some time trying to solve a small problem, and it took longer than I expected. When you describe situations like this, your English sounds realistic and natural. Another very useful skill in advanced speaking is comparing experiences. People often compare two things when they talk. For example, you might say, I enjoy reading books, but sometimes watching a movie feels more relaxing. Or, I like working in the morning, but occasionally I feel more creative at night. These comparisons help you express balanced thoughts. Let's practice comparing ideas. Imagine someone asks you, do you prefer studying alone or studying with others? You might answer, I usually prefer studying alone because it allows me to focus better. But sometimes studying with others can be helpful for sharing ideas. This kind of comparison shows thoughtful communication. Another habit of advanced speakers is sharing small reflections about daily life. They often describe what they notice, what they appreciate, or what they learn from simple experiences. For example, you might say, "Sometimes I realize that the quiet moments of the day are the most peaceful." Or, "I've noticed that when I practice English a little every day, my confidence improves." These reflections add depth to your speech. Let's practice reflecting on a simple moment. Think about something small that made your day better. You might say, "This morning I enjoyed a quiet cup of coffee, and it helped me start the day calmly." Or perhaps, "I spent a few minutes listening to music, and it improved my mood." These reflections make conversations feel personal. Another very helpful technique in advanced English is giving examples. When you explain an idea, giving an example makes your message clearer. For instance, imagine you are talking about relaxing activities. You might say, "I enjoy doing simple things to relax. For example, taking a walk, listening to music, or reading a few pages of a book." Examples help listeners understand your meaning more easily. Let's practice giving examples. Imagine someone asks you, "What do you like to do in your free time?" You might answer, "In my free time, I enjoy simple activities. For example, watching movies, learning new things, or spending time with friends." Providing examples like this makes your speech more informative. Another important skill is describing routines in a natural way. Advanced speakers often talk about habits and routines smoothly. For example, you might say, "Most evenings I try to relax after finishing my work. Sometimes I read something interesting, and other times I just enjoy quiet time." Or, "In the morning, I usually take a few minutes to plan my day because it helps me stay organized." Let's practice describing a routine. Think about something you do regularly. You might say, "Every evening, I try to spend a little on time learning something new because it keeps my mind active." Or, "Before going to sleep, I often reflect on the day and think about what I learned." These descriptions help your English sound thoughtful and structured. Another key feature of advanced speaking is summarizing thoughts. Sometimes after explaining several ideas, speakers summarize them briefly. For example, you might say, "So overall, it was a really enjoyable experience." Or, "In the end, everything worked out well." These summary phrases help organize conversations. Let's practice summarizing an experience. Imagine you spent the day doing several activities. You might say, "Overall, the day felt productive and satisfying." Or perhaps, "In the end, I felt happy with how the day went." These small phrases make your speech sound complete. As we continue this lesson together, I'll remember something very important. Advanced English does not come from memorizing hundreds of complicated expressions. It comes from learning how to describe life naturally, sharing ideas calmly, and connecting thoughts clearly. The more you practice expressing experiences, opinions, emotions, and reflections, the more fluent and confident you will become. So take your time. Enjoy each sentence you practice and allow your English to grow gradually. Because fluency is not something you force. It is something you build, little by little, every single day. As we continue exploring how to speak advanced English, let's talk about something that fluent speakers do very naturally. They make their conversations feel relaxed and human by adding small connecting thoughts. These thoughts may seem simple, but they help your speech sound smooth instead of stiff or mechanical. For example, imagine someone asks you about your day. A basic answer might be, "My day was good." But advanced speakers often allow their answer to unfold more naturally. You might say, "My day was actually quite pleasant. I started the morning slowly, finished a few important tasks, and by the evening, I felt satisfied with what I had done." Notice how the speaker moves through the day step by step. This creates a natural flow of ideas. Let's practice this idea together. Imagine someone asks you, "How did your morning begin today?" Instead of answering very quickly, try explaining the moment gradually. You might say, "My morning started quietly. I woke up a little earlier than usual, opened the window, and enjoyed the cool air for a few minutes before beginning the day." Or perhaps your morning, "I was more rushed." And you might say, "My morning started a bit quickly. I had several things to prepare, and for a moment, it felt slightly hectic. But after a while, everything settled down." When you practice describing moments like this, your English begins to sound more expressive. Another important skill in advanced speaking is describing thoughts and decisions. In real life, we often explain why we decided to do something or how we came to a decision. For example, imagine you are talking about learning English. You might say, "At first, I wasn't sure how to begin learning English, but eventually I decided to start practicing a little every day." Or perhaps, "I realized that listening to English regularly could help my understanding, so I started doing it more often." These kinds of sentences show the listener how you're thinking, how developed. Let's practice describing a decision. Think about something you decided to do recently. You might say, "I decided to spend more time practicing English because I realized consistency is very important." Or maybe, "I decided to wake up earlier so that I could start my day more calmly." When you explain decisions like this, your speech becomes thoughtful and reflective. Another useful ability in advanced English is describing expectations and surprises. Many conversations involve moments where something happened differently than expected. For example, imagine you tried a new restaurant. You might say, "I wasn't expecting much from the restaurant, but the food turned out to be surprisingly good." Or perhaps, "I thought the place would be crowded, but it was actually very peaceful." These contrasts between expectation and reality make conversations interesting. Let's practice this together. Think about something that surprised you recently. You might say, "I expected the task to be difficult, but once I started working on it, it became easier than I thought." Or maybe, "I thought the movie would be boring, but it ended up being quite entertaining." These small contrasts add energy to your English. Another feature of advanced speaking is describing gradual change. Many experiences happen slowly over time, and fluent speakers often describe this process clearly. For example, you might say, "Little by little, my confidence in English began to grow." Or, "Over time, I started understanding conversations more easily." These expressions show progress and development. Let's practice describing gradual improvement. You might say, "At first, I struggled to understand fast. English, but slowly my ears became more familiar with the sounds." Or perhaps, "In the beginning, I felt nervous speaking English, but with practice, my confidence increased." These sentences reflect real learning experiences. Another habit of advanced speakers is describing the atmosphere or mood of a situation. When you describe how a place feels, your listener can imagine the scene clearly. For example, imagine you visited a park. You might say, "The park felt calm and refreshing. The trees moved gently in the wind, and the air was cool." Or maybe you describe a cafe. "The cafe had a warm and welcoming atmosphere. Soft music was playing, and people were quietly enjoying their drinks." These small sensory details make your speech vivid. Let's practice describing atmosphere. Think about a place you enjoy visiting. You might say, "There is a small place near my home where I like to relax. The environment is quiet and it feels peaceful." Or perhaps, "My favorite place to think is a quiet corner where everything feels calm and comfortable." These descriptions allow your listener to visualize the place. Another skill in advanced English is explaining what you learned from an experience. In daily conversations, people often reflect on what they gained from something. For example, you might say, "From that experience, I learned the importance of patience." Or, "That situation taught me how valuable preparation can be." Let's practice reflecting on learning. Think about something you discovered recently. You might say, "I realize that practicing English regularly helps me remember vocabulary better." Or maybe, "I discovered that listening carefully is just as important as our speaking." These reflections show maturity in communication. Another natural habit of fluent speakers is describing small daily pleasures. Life is full of simple moments that can become meaningful conversations. For example, you might say, "One of the small joys of my day is enjoying a quiet cup of coffee in the morning." Or, "I really enjoy the peaceful feeling that comes after finishing an important task." These descriptions make conversations warm and personal. Let's practice describing a small moment of enjoyment. You might say, "I enjoy the quiet feeling of the evening when the day begins to slow down." Or perhaps, "I like the calm moment when I finish work and can finally relax." These small expressions help your English feel natural and emotional. Another powerful element of advanced English is storytelling. Even very simple events can become interesting when you describe them clearly. For example, you might say, "Earlier today, something amusing happened. I spent several minutes looking for my keys, and in the end, I realized they were already in my pocket." Or perhaps, "Yesterday, I met an old friend unexpectedly, and we ended up talking for much longer than we planned." These small stories bring conversations to life. Let's practice telling a small story. Think about something simple that happened recently. You might say, "Yesterday I tried cooking something new, and although I was unsure at first, the result turned out surprisingly good." Or maybe, "Earlier today I started reading a book, and I quickly became interested in the story." These short stories help your brain organize events naturally in English. as you continue developing your advanced speaking skills. Now, remember that language is not only about information, it is also about connection, expression, and understanding. When you describe moments from your life, share thoughts honestly, and speak with curiosity, your English becomes more alive. So continue practicing these habits, expanding ideas, describing experiences, reflecting on moments, and sharing small stories. With patience and consistency, your ability to speak advanced English will continue to grow naturally. As we continue moving deeper into advanced English speaking, let's explore another habit that fluent speakers use very naturally. They often describe their thoughts step by step while explaining something. Instead of jumping directly to a final answer, they guide the listener through the process of thinking. And this creates speech that feels clear, thoughtful, and easy to follow. For example, imagine someone asks you a question like, "How do you usually solve a difficult problem?" A short answer might be, "I think about it." But advanced speakers often explain the process more clearly. You might say, "When I face a difficult problem, I usually try to stay calm first. Then I look at the situation carefully, and little by little, I begin to find possible solutions." This kind of explanation allows the listener to understand not only what you do, but how you approach the situation. Let's practice this thinking style together. Imagine someone asks you, "How do you usually start your day?" Instead of answering quickly, try to guide the listener through the process. You might say, "When my day begins, I usually take a few quiet moments to wake up slowly. Then I prepare something simple to eat. And after that, I begin planning what I want to accomplish during the day." This description sounds calm, organized, and natural. Another important skill in advanced English is describing intentions. In daily life, we often talk about what we intend to do, what we hope to achieve, or what we would like to improve. For example, you might say, "I'm trying to improve my English speaking skills, so I practice a little every day." Or perhaps, "I'm hoping to become more confident when speaking English, so I look for opportunities to use the language." These sentences describe your goals and intentions clearly. Let's practice describing intentions. Think about something you would like to improve in your life. You might say, "I'm trying to develop better daily habits so that my days feel more organized." Or maybe, "I'm hoping to learn something new each week." Well, because it keeps my mind active. These intentions show purpose and motivation. Another powerful element of advanced speaking is describing effort and persistence. Many conversations involve explaining how you continued working towards something, even when it was not easy. For example, you might say, "At first, learning English felt challenging, but I kept practicing, and gradually I became more comfortable." Or perhaps, "I didn't understand everything immediately, but I stayed patient and continued learning." These expressions reflect determination. Let's practice describing effort. Think about something you worked hard to achieve. You might say, "I spent many days practicing, and slowly my skills improved." Or maybe, "I didn't succeed right away, but I kept trying until things became clearer. These kinds of sentences sound honest and realistic. Another key habit of advanced speakers is describing balance in life. Many conversations involve talking about how people balance work, rest, responsibilities, and relaxation. For example, you might say, I try to keep a healthy balance between work and rest because both are important. Or perhaps, during the week I focus on responsibilities, but on weekends I allow myself time to relax. These ideas are very common in daily conversations. Let's practice describing balance. You might say, I try to spend part of my day working and part of my day relaxing. Or maybe, I believe it's important to work hard, but also to give yourself time to recharge. These balanced perspectives sound thoughtful and mature. Another useful skill in advanced English is describing personal habits. People often talk about habits when they share and daily routines or lifestyle choices. For example, you might say, one habit I've developed recently is spending a few minutes reflecting on my day before going to sleep. Or perhaps, I've developed a habit of reading something interesting every evening. Habits like these become natural topics in conversations. Let's practice describing a habit. You might say, one small habit that helps me stay calm is taking a few deep breaths when I feel stressed. Or maybe, I try to develop the habit of practicing English regularly. Describing habits helps your English feel practical and realistic. Another aspect of advanced English is expressing appreciation. Fluent speakers often express gratitude or appreciation when talking about experiences. For example, you might say, I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn new things every day. Or, I really appreciate moments when I can relax and reflect quietly. These expressions create warm and positive communication. Let's practice expressing appreciation. You might say, I appreciate the small, peaceful moments in my day. Or perhaps, I feel thankful whenever I make progress in learning something new. These expressions add emotional depth to your speech. Another skill that helps conversations feel natural is describing curiosity. Curiosity is a powerful motivator in learning and in life, and it often appears in advanced conversations. For example, you might say, I've always been curious about how languages work, or perhaps, I often wonder how people develop new ideas. Curiosity makes conversations interesting. Let's practice expressing curiosity. You might say, I'm curious about how different cultures communicate. Or maybe, I often wonder how people stay motivated while learning something difficult. These thoughts show intellectual curiosity. Another advanced speaking habit is describing moments of realization. Sometimes we suddenly understand something new. And describing that realization can create meaningful conversation. For example, you might say, one day I realized that learning slowly but consistently was the key to improvement. Or, I suddenly realized how much progress I had made. These moments of realization can be powerful. Let's practice describing a realization. You might say, at one point I realized that patience was very important in learning. Or perhaps, I realized that every small step forward was valuable. These reflections show growth. Another common feature of advanced English is describing motivation. People often explain what inspires them to continue learning or working toward goals. For example, you might say, "One thing that motivates me to keep learning English is the ability to communicate with more people." Or perhaps, "I feel motivated whenever I notice small improvements." Motivation is a very natural conversation topic. Let's practice describing motivation. You might say, "What motivates me most is the idea of improving a little every day." Or maybe, "I feel encouraged whenever I see progress." These ideas help create positive communication. Another important ability is describing patience. Learning and growth often require patience, and fluent speakers talk about this openly. For example, you might say, "I've learned that patience is essential when developing new skills." Or, "Sometimes progress feels slow, but patience helps you." I'll continue. Let's practice expressing patience. You might say, "I try to stay patient with myself while learning." Or perhaps, "I remind myself that improvement takes time." These expressions sound mature and thoughtful. As we continue building advanced English speaking skills, remember that communication is not only about vocabulary or grammar. It is about sharing thoughts honestly, explaining experiences clearly, and connecting ideas in a natural way. Each time you speak, each time you describe a moment, and each time you reflect on something you learned, you strengthen your fluency. So continue practicing slowly, calmly, and consistently. Because with every sentence you speak, your confidence grows, and your ability to express yourself in English becomes stronger. As your English becomes stronger, another powerful skill begins to develop naturally, and that is the ability to express complex thoughts in a calm and organized way. Fluent speakers often share ideas that include multiple layers, meaning they explain what they think, why they think it, and sometimes how their opinion developed over time. For example, imagine someone asks you a simple question like, "Why do you enjoy learning languages?" A short answer might be, "Because it's interesting." But advanced speakers often expand that idea slowly and thoughtfully. You might say, "I enjoy learning languages because it allows me to understand people from different cultures, and it also helps me see the world from different perspectives." Or perhaps, "Learning languages feels rewarding to me because every new word or expression opens another door to communication." When you expand your thoughts in this way, or your English begins to sound deeper and more meaningful. Let's practice this idea together. Imagine someone asks you, "Why do people learn new skills?" You might answer, "People learn new skills for many reasons. Sometimes they want to improve their career, and sometimes they simply enjoy the challenge of learning something new." Or you could say, "Many people enjoy learning new skills because it keeps life interesting and encourages personal growth." These kinds of explanations make conversations thoughtful and engaging. Another important feature of advanced English is describing experiences with perspective. Fluent speakers often describe what they thought at first and how their understanding changed later. For example, you might say, "At first I thought learning English would be very difficult, But over time, I realized that consistent practice makes a big difference. Or perhaps, in the beginning, I felt nervous speaking English, but gradually that feeling started to disappear. This ability to reflect on change shows growth and maturity in communication. Let's practice describing a changing perspective. Think about something you once believed, but later understood differently. You might say, "At first, I believed fluency required perfect grammar, but later, I realized communication is more important." Or maybe, "I used to think speaking English quickly was necessary, but now I understand that clarity matters more than speed." These reflections help your speech sound thoughtful and honest. Another habit of advanced speakers is describing moments of focus. Many conversations include situations where people talk about concentration, productivity, or mental clarity. For example, you might say, "When I focus on something deeply, time seems to pass very quickly." Or perhaps, "I find it easier to concentrate when the environment around me is calm and quiet." Let's practice describing focus. You might say, "I try to focus on one task at a time because it helps me work more efficiently." Or maybe, "When I concentrate fully on something, I often discover new ideas." These expressions show awareness and clarity of thought. Another powerful element of advanced English is describing imagination. Conversations often become interesting when people describe what they imagine or what they hope for. For example, you might say, "I sometimes imagine how my life will change as I become more fluent in English." Or perhaps, "I enjoy imagining new possibilities for the future." Let's practice describing imagination. You might say, "I imagine a future where I can communicate confidently with people from many countries." Or maybe, "I like to imagine new ideas and explore different possibilities." Imagination adds creativity to conversations. Another natural habit of fluent speakers is describing small moments of reflection. Sometimes people pause to think about life, experiences, or personal growth. For example, you might say, "Sometimes I take a quiet moment to reflect on everything I learned during the day." Or perhaps, "I often reflect on my experiences and think about how they helped me grow." Let's practice reflecting on a moment. You might say, "Sometimes I look back at my progress and feel encouraged by how far I have come." Or maybe, "I enjoy reflecting on small successes that happen during the day." These reflections show awareness and appreciation. Another feature of advanced English is describing lessons learned from experience. Life constantly teaches us things, and fluent speakers often share these lessons during conversations. For example, you might say, "One lesson I've learned is that patience leads to better results." Or perhaps, "I've learned that small daily efforts create big changes over time." Let's practice describing a life lesson. You might say, "One thing I've learned is that persistence is more important than perfection." Or maybe, "I've learned that confidence grows through practice." These insights make conversations meaningful. Another powerful skill is describing personal growth. Advanced speakers often talk about how they have changed or improved. For example, you might say, "Over the past few months, I've become more comfortable to speaking English." Or perhaps, I've noticed that my listening skills have improved significantly. Let's practice describing growth. You might say, over time, I've become more confident expressing my ideas. Or maybe, I feel proud of the progress I've made. These expressions show confidence and self-awareness. Another aspect of advanced speaking is describing motivation during difficult moments. Many conversations involve discussing how people stay motivated even when challenges appear. For example, you might say, whenever learning feels difficult, I remind myself why I started. Or perhaps, I stay motivated by focusing on the progress I've already made. Let's practice describing motivation during challenges. You might say, even when something feels difficult, I try to stay patient and keep practicing. Or maybe, I remind myself that improvement takes time. These thoughts reflect resilience. Another important habit of fluent speakers is expressing encouragement. In conversations, people often encourage each other, especially when discussing learning or personal development. For example, you might say, learning a new language takes time, but every small step forward matters. Or perhaps, consistency is more important than speed. Let's practice encouraging others. You might say, if you practice regularly, you will notice improvement. Or maybe, every effort you make brings you closer to your goal. Encouraging language creates positive communication. Another skill in advanced English is describing the value of experiences. People often talk about why certain experiences are meaningful. For example, you might say, experiences teach us things that books sometimes cannot. Or perhaps, every experience adds something valuable to our understanding. Let's practice describing the value of experience. You might say, traveling teaches us to see the world from different perspectives. Or maybe, learning a language opens the door to new friendships and opportunities. These insights add wisdom to conversations. As you continue developing your advanced English speaking skills, remember that fluency grows through thoughtful expression, through reflection, and through curiosity. Each time you describe your experiences, share lessons, or explain your ideas, you strengthen your ability to communicate clearly. So continue exploring your thoughts in English. Continue expressing your ideas calmly. And continue enjoying the process of learning. Because the more naturally you speak, the more confident you will become. And one day, you will notice something wonderful. Speaking English will feel as natural as sharing your thoughts with a close friend. As we continue strengthening the ability to speak advanced English, let's explore another important habit of fluent speakers, and that is the ability to describe situations with clarity and calm confidence. When people communicate naturally, they often guide the listener through a situation step by step, so that the listener can easily imagine what is happening. For example, imagine someone asks you, "What do you usually do when you need to relax?" A very short answer might be, "I listen to music." But advanced speakers often expand their thoughts slowly and comfortably. You might say, "When I need to relax, I usually find a quiet place, put on some calm music, and allow myself a few moments to breathe and slow down." This answer feels gentle, thoughtful, and descriptive. Let's practice describing a relaxing moment together. Think about something simple that helps you relax after a busy day. You might say, after a long day, I like to sit somewhere comfortable, take a few deep breaths, and allow my mind to settle. Or perhaps, one of the ways I relax is by taking a short walk, especially when the evening air feels fresh and calm. These descriptions help create peaceful and natural speech. Another important skill in advanced English is describing situations where you needed to think carefully before acting. Many conversations involve moments where people had to consider different choices. For example, you might say, earlier today I faced a small decision. So I paused for a moment, thought about the possible outcomes, and then chose the option that seemed most reasonable. Or perhaps, when I need to make a decision, I try to stay calm and look at the situation from different perspectives. These sentences show thoughtful communication. Let's practice describing a thoughtful moment. Think about a time when you needed to make a decision. You might say, I took a few minutes to think about the situation, and eventually I felt confident about the choice I made. Or maybe, I considered several possibilities before deciding what to do. These expressions make your English sound reflective and composed. Another key feature of advanced English is describing how people react to unexpected events. Life often presents surprises, and fluent speakers talk about these moments with clarity. For example, you might say, something unexpected happened earlier, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond, but eventually everything worked out. Or perhaps, at first the situation seemed confusing, but after thinking carefully, I found a simple solution. These descriptions show problem-solving ability. Let's practice describing a surprising moment. You might say, at first I felt slightly surprised, but after a moment I realized everything was fine. Or maybe, the situation looked complicated at first, but it became clearer once I understood it better. These expressions show calm thinking. Another habit of advanced speakers is describing the importance of small daily improvements. Fluent speakers often recognize the value of small, consistent efforts. For example, you might say, I've learned that even a few minutes of daily practice can make a meaningful difference. Or, perhaps, small improvements every day eventually create significant progress. These reflections are common in conversations about learning. Let's practice describing improvement. You might say, every day I try to improve just a little, and over time the results become visible. Or maybe, even small efforts add up when they are repeated consistently. These sentences sound encouraging and optimistic. Another powerful element of advanced English is describing moments of calm awareness. Many people talk about how they pause and observe their surroundings. For example, you might say, sometimes I pause for a moment and notice the quiet details around me. Or perhaps, I enjoy moments when everything becomes calm and peaceful. Let's practice describing awareness. You might say, I enjoy the quiet feeling of early morning when everything seems peaceful. Or maybe, there are moments during the day when everything slows down and those moments feel refreshing. These descriptions make your speech sound thoughtful and poetic. Another skill fluent speakers often use is describing encouragement they give themselves. People sometimes speak about how they motivate themselves during difficult moments. For example, you might say, "When something feels difficult, I remind myself that improvement takes time." Or perhaps, "I encourage myself to keep going, even when progress feels slow." Let's practice describing self-encouragement. You might say, "I remind myself that every effort matters," or maybe, "I try to stay patient with myself while learning." These expressions show emotional awareness. Another important habit in advanced English is describing curiosity about the world. Curious thoughts often appear in natural conversations. For example, you might say, "I often wonder how people learn new skills so quickly." Or perhaps, "I sometimes think about how communication connects people from different cultures." Let's practice expressing curiosity. You might say, "I'm curious about how languages evolve over time." Or maybe, "I often wonder how new ideas are created." Curiosity creates thoughtful discussions. Another skill in advanced speaking is describing appreciation for progress. Fluent speakers often reflect on their progress and express gratitude for improvement. For example, you might say, "When I look back at my progress, I feel grateful for every step forward." Or perhaps, "I appreciate the effort I've invested in learning." Let's practice expressing appreciation. You might say, "I feel thankful whenever I notice improvement." Or maybe, "I appreciate the journey of learning itself." These reflections make speech sound sincere and warm. Another advanced speaking habit is describing patience during learning. Fluent speakers understand that growth takes time. For example, you might say, "I remind myself that learning a language is a gradual process." Or perhaps, "Patience is essential when developing new abilities." Let's practice describing patience. You might say, "I try to remain patient during the learning process." Or maybe, "I know that every step forward requires time and practice." These ideas show maturity and wisdom. As we continue building advanced English speaking skills, remember that communication becomes powerful when ideas are expressed calmly and clearly. The goal is not to sound complicated, but to sound natural, thoughtful, and confident. Every sentence you practice helps your mind organize thoughts more smoothly. Every reflection strengthens your ability to communicate. And every moment of practice brings you closer to fluency. So continue exploring your thoughts. Continue speaking slowly and clearly. And continue enjoying the journey of learning English. Because when learning becomes part of your daily life, progress becomes inevitable. As your ability to speak English continues to grow, another important skill begins to appear naturally, and that skill is the ability to explain ideas in a calm and structured way. Fluent speakers often organize their thoughts clearly so that the listener can follow their meaning easily. They don't rush. They allow their sentences to develop naturally. And they guide the listener from one idea to the next. For example, imagine someone asks you, "How do you stay motivated when learning something difficult?" A very simple answer might be, I practice every day. But advanced speakers often expand the thought in a gentle and natural way. You might say, when I'm learning something difficult, I try to focus on small progress instead of perfection, because even a little improvement each day keeps me motivated. Or perhaps, one thing that helps me stay motivated is remembering why I started learning in the first place. These kinds of explanations sound thoughtful and sincere. Let's practice this idea together. Imagine someone asks you, why is practice important when learning English? You might answer, practice is important because language learning is like building a habit. The more often you use the language, the more natural it becomes. Or perhaps, practice helps the brain become familiar with new sounds and patterns, and over time, those patterns become easier to understand. These explanations show understanding and reflection. Another important habit of advanced speakers is describing their thought process when solving a problem. Instead of simply stating the result, they explain how they arrived at that result. For example, you might say, when I encounter a problem, I usually try to analyze the situation carefully. Then I look for possible solutions and choose the most reasonable one. Or perhaps, I like to break problems into smaller parts because that makes them easier to understand. Let's practice describing a problem-solving approach. You might say, when something feels complicated, I try to slow down and think about it step by step. Or maybe, I usually start by understanding the problem clearly before looking for a solution. These sentences demonstrate logical thinking. Another skill in advanced English is describing how people handle challenges. Conversations often include stories about overcoming difficulties. For example, you might say, sometimes learning can feel challenging, but those challenges often help us grow. Or perhaps, whenever I face a difficult moment, I remind myself that every challenge is also an opportunity to learn. Let's practice describing resilience. You might say, even when something feels difficult, I try to stay patient and continue practicing. Or maybe, I believe challenges can teach us valuable lessons. These expressions reflect perseverance. Another powerful ability in advanced English is explaining personal preferences with clarity. People often talk about what they prefer and why. For example, you might say, I prefer studying in a quiet environment because it allows me to concentrate more easily. Or perhaps, I enjoy learning through conversation because it feels more interactive. Let's practice expressing preferences. You might say, I prefer learning slowly and consistently rather than trying to learn too much at once. Or maybe, I enjoy listening to real conversations because they sound natural. These explanations help your speech feel authentic. Another natural feature of advanced speaking is describing personal experiences with insight. Fluent speakers often share what they discovered through experience. For example, you might say, through experience, I've learned that patience is one of the most valuable skills. Or perhaps, I discovered that practicing regularly makes a huge difference in language learning. Let's practice describing insight. You might say, I realize that confidence grows gradually through practice. Or maybe, I learned that mistakes are part of the learning process. These reflections sound thoughtful and honest. Another skill in advanced English is describing moments of inspiration. Sometimes something inspires us to think differently or act differently. For example, you might say, "One conversation inspired me to practice English more seriously." Or perhaps, "I felt inspired when I realized how much progress I had made." Let's practice describing inspiration. You might say, "I feel inspired whenever I notice improvement." Or maybe, "Seeing progress motivates me to continue." These ideas create positive communication. Another powerful element of advanced English is describing goals for the future. People often talk about what they hope to achieve. For example, you might say, "One of my goals is to become more confident when speaking English." Or perhaps, "I hope to communicate fluently with people from different cultures." Let's practice describing goals. You might say, "My goal is to continue improving step by step." Or maybe, "I want to become comfortable expressing my ideas clearly." These goals reflect motivation and ambition. Another important habit of fluent speakers is summarizing ideas clearly. After explaining several thoughts, they often conclude their message with a clear summary. For example, you might say, "So overall, the most important thing is consistent practice." Or perhaps, "In the end, patience and persistence make the biggest difference." Let's practice summarizing an idea. You might say, "So in general, learning English becomes easier with regular exposure." Or maybe, "Overall, progress happens gradually but steadily." These summaries help organize communication. Another useful skill in advanced English is expressing encouragement for others. Fluent speakers often encourage others when discussing learning or growth. For example, you might say, "If you practice consistently, you will eventually notice improvement." Or perhaps, "Every effort you make helps build your confidence." Let's practice encouraging someone. You might say, "Keep practicing regularly and your skills will continue to grow." Or maybe, "Don't worry about mistakes. They are a natural part of learning." These supportive expressions create positive interaction. Another feature of advanced speaking is describing the beauty of communication itself. Many people talk about how language allows them to connect with others. For example, you might say, "Language is powerful because it allows people to share ideas and experiences." Or perhaps, "Communication connects people from different backgrounds." Let's practice describing communication. You might say, "Learning a language opens the door to new friendships." Or maybe, "Language helps people understand each other better." These reflections show appreciation for communication. As we continue building your ability to speak advanced English, remember something very important. Fluency is not only about vocabulary, it is about expressing ideas clearly, sharing experiences honestly, and communicating with confidence. Every sentence you speak strengthens your ability to think in English. Every reflection deepens your understanding. And every conversation brings you closer to fluency. So continue practicing, continue exploring your thoughts, and continue speaking with patience and confidence. Because with consistent effort advanced English will become a natural part of the way you express yourself. As your confidence in speaking English continues to grow, another important skill begins to develop naturally, and that is the ability to explain ideas with clarity and calmness while maintaining a natural rhythm of speech. Fluent speakers often move through their thoughts slowly and smoothly, allowing each idea to connect with the next. This rhythm helps conversations feel relaxed and easy to understand. For example, imagine someone asks you, "What helps you stay calm during a busy day?" A short answer might be, "I take a break." But advanced speakers usually expand the idea with more detail. You might say, "When my day becomes busy, I try to pause for a moment and take a short break, because even a few minutes of quiet can help me regain focus." Or perhaps, "I try to remind myself that staying calm allows me to think more clearly, and that usually helps me handle tasks more effectively." These responses sound thoughtful and balanced. Let's practice describing calmness in daily life. Think about something you do when you feel stressed. You might say, "When I feel overwhelmed, I try to slow down and take a few deep breaths, and that often helps me regain clarity." Or perhaps, "Sometimes the best solution is simply stepping away from a task for a few minutes." These kinds of expressions help your English sound reflective and mature. Another valuable skill in advanced English is describing how people learn from an experience. Conversations often include stories about lessons gained through practice. For example, you might say, "Over time, I've learned that consistent practice is far more effective than occasional effort." Or perhaps, "I discovered that the more I listen to English conversations, the easier it becomes to understand natural speech." Let's practice describing lessons from experience. You might say, "I realize that patience and persistence are essential for learning any skill." Or maybe, "I've learned that making mistakes is a normal and helpful part of improvement." These reflections demonstrate insight. Another habit of fluent speakers is describing moments of realization. These are moments when something suddenly becomes clear. For example, you might say, "One day I realized that understanding English requires exposure to real conversations." Or perhaps, "I suddenly understood that fluency grows through daily practice." Let's practice describing realization. You might say, "At some point, I realized that progress happens gradually." Or maybe, "I noticed that my confidence increased the more I practiced speaking." These realizations add depth to your communication. Another powerful feature of advanced English is describing the importance of consistency. Many conversations about learning involve the idea of repeating small efforts over time. For example, you might say, "Consistency is one of the most important factors in learning a language." Or perhaps, "Even a few minutes of practice every day can create long-term improvement." Let's practice describing consistency. You might say, "I try to practice English regularly, even if it is only for a short time." Or maybe, "Small daily habits often lead to meaningful progress." These ideas sound encouraging and practical. Another useful skill in advanced English is describing personal discipline. People sometimes talk about how they organize their time and maintain focus. For example, you might say, I try to maintain discipline in my daily routine because it helps me stay productive. Or perhaps, I've learned that structured habits can make learning more effective. Let's practice describing discipline. You might say, I try to dedicate a small part of each day to learning something new. Or maybe, developing good habits has helped me stay consistent. These expressions show responsibility and determination. Another often feel inspired to continue. For example, you might say, whenever I notice even a small improvement, it motivates me to continue learning. Or perhaps, seeing progress reminds me that effort is worthwhile. Let's practice describing encouragement. You might say, every small success encourages me to keep practicing. Or maybe, I feel motivated when I see how far I've come. These ideas create positive communication. Another skill in advanced English is describing long-term growth. People often talk about how their abilities have developed over months or years. For example, you might say, over the past year, my understanding of English conversations has improved significantly. Or perhaps, over time, my confidence when speaking English has grown steadily. Let's practice describing long-term growth. You might say, with regular. Practice. My pronunciation has become clearer. Or maybe, gradually, my ability to express ideas has improved. These expressions demonstrate progress and commitment. Another important element of advanced speaking is expressing gratitude for opportunities to learn. Fluent speakers often appreciate the experiences that help them grow. For example, you might say, I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn new languages. Or perhaps, I appreciate every chance I have to practice communication. Let's practice expressing gratitude. You might say, I feel thankful whenever I have the chance to learn something new. Or maybe, I appreciate the journey of improvement. These expressions create warm and positive communication. Another feature of advanced English is describing the value of persistence. Persistence means continuing even when something feels difficult. For example, you might say, persistence is often the key to mastering a new skill. Or perhaps, continuing to practice, even when progress feels slow, eventually leads to improvement. Let's practice describing persistence. You might say, I try to remain persistent even when learning feels challenging. Or maybe, I remind myself that effort always brings results. These sentences reflect determination. Another natural habit of fluent speakers is describing hope for the future. People often talk about what they hope to achieve. For example, you might say, I hope to continue improving my English communication skills. Or perhaps, I look forward to speaking English confidently in many different situations. Let's practice describing hope. You might say, I hope to become more fluent and comfortable with the language. Or maybe, I look forward to new opportunities to communicate with others. These expressions sound optimistic and inspiring. As we continue building your advanced English speaking ability, remember something essential. Fluency grows through patience, consistency, and reflection. Each time you describe your experiences, explain your thoughts, or share what you have learned, your English becomes stronger. So continue speaking calmly, continue expanding your ideas, and continue enjoying the process of learning. Because every moment of practice brings you closer to expressing yourself clearly and confidently in English. As we move further into speaking advanced English, let's explore another powerful communication habit that fluent speakers naturally develop. And that is the ability to describe ideas with depth and reflection. Instead of speaking only about actions or facts, advanced speakers often talk about what those experiences mean to them and how those experiences influence their thinking. For example, imagine someone asks you, "What does learning English mean to you?" A very simple answer might be, "It helps me communicate." But advanced speakers often expand that idea more thoughtfully. You might say, "For me, learning English represents more than just communication. It opens the possibility of connecting with people from different parts of the world and understanding perspectives that I might never encounter otherwise." Or perhaps, "Learning English feels like opening a door to new ideas, new conversations, and new opportunities." These kinds of expressions show depth of thought, and they make your speech sound confident and reflective. Let's now practice this idea together. Imagine someone asks you, "Why do you enjoy learning something new?" You might say, "Learning something new always feels exciting to me because it reminds me that there is always more to discover and understand." Or perhaps, "I enjoy learning because it helps me grow as a person and it keeps life interesting." These answers sound meaningful and expressive. Another important ability in advanced English is describing personal values. Many conversations involve talking about what we believe is important in life. For example, you might say, "One value that is very important to me is curiosity, because curiosity encourages continuous learning." Or perhaps, "I believe patience is an essential quality, especially when learning something new." Let's practice describing values. Think about something you believe is important in life. You might say, "I believe persistence is very valuable because success often requires consistent effort." Or maybe, "I think kindness and understanding are essential for good communication." These kinds of statements sound thoughtful and mature. Another powerful habit of fluent speakers is describing moments when they gained insight. Insight means understanding something more deeply than before. For example, you might say, "At some point, I gained the insight that language learning is not about perfection, but about communication." Or perhaps, "I realized that making mistakes can actually accelerate learning." Let's practice describing insight. You might say, "I came to understand that progress happens gradually." Or maybe, "I discovered that patience is an important part of improvement." These reflections help your speech sound reflective and wise. Another feature of advanced English is describing appreciation for the learning journey. Fluent speakers often talk about the process of growth rather than only the final result. For example, you might say, "I've learned to appreciate the journey of learning because every step teaches something valuable." Or perhaps, The process of improvement itself can be very rewarding. Let's practice expressing appreciation for learning. You might say, I appreciate every opportunity to expand my knowledge. Or maybe, I enjoy the gradual progress that comes with consistent practice. These expressions sound positive and inspiring. Another useful skill in advanced English is describing patience and resilience. Many conversations involve talking about how people continue learning even when things feel difficult. For our example, you might say, whenever I feel discouraged, I remind myself that improvement takes time. Or perhaps, I've learned that patience is one of the most valuable qualities in learning. Let's practice describing resilience. You might say, even when something feels difficult, I try to remain patient and continue practicing. Or maybe, I believe persistence eventually leads to success. These ideas show strength and determination. Another habit of advanced speakers is describing how communication connects people. Language is not only about words, it is about relationships and understanding. For example, you might say, language allows people to share ideas, emotions, and experiences. Or perhaps, communication helps build bridges between cultures. Let's practice describing communication. You might say, learning a language allows us to understand the world more deeply. Or maybe, communication helps people build meaningful connections. These reflections show appreciation for language. Another advanced speaking skill is describing encouragement for others who are learning. Fluent speakers often inspire and support others during conversations. For example, you might say, if you continue practicing regularly, your confidence will grow. Or perhaps, every small effort contributes to improvement. Let's practice encouraging someone who is learning English. You might say, even small progress is valuable, so keep moving forward. Or maybe, consistency is far more important than perfection. These supportive expressions create positive communication. Another important habit in advanced English is describing long-term perspective. People often talk about how time influences growth. For example, you might say, over time, even small efforts can produce remarkable results. Or perhaps, learning a language is a journey that unfolds gradually. Let's practice describing long-term perspective. You might say, with patience and practice, improvement becomes visible. Or maybe, every day of practice contributes to long-term progress. These expressions sound wise and thoughtful. Another useful skill is describing confidence that grows through experience. Many conversations include reflections on how confidence develops over time. For example, you might say, confidence grows naturally when we practice regularly. Or perhaps, the more you use a language, the more comfortable you become. Let's practice describing growing confidence. You might say, with each conversation, my confidence improves. Or maybe, I feel more comfortable expressing my ideas now. These statements reflect personal growth. Another feature of advanced English is describing gratitude for progress. Fluent speakers often appreciate their own improvement. For example, you might say, I'm grateful for every step forward in my learning journey. Or perhaps, I appreciate the progress I've made so far. Let's practice expressing gratitude. You might say, I feel thankful for the opportunity to learn. Or maybe, I appreciate the effort that led to improvement. These reflections create a positive mindset. Another habit of advanced speakers is describing hope and future possibilities. People often speak about what they hope to achieve next. For example, you might say, I hope to continue improving my communication skills. Or perhaps, I look forward to speaking English more confidently in the future. Let's practice describing future possibilities. You might say, I hope to explore new opportunities through language. Or maybe, I look forward to communicating with people from different cultures. These thoughts sound optimistic and inspiring. As we approach the final part of our lesson, remember something essential about advanced English. It is not about using complicated vocabulary. It is about expressing ideas clearly, sharing experiences honestly, and communicating with confidence. Every sentence you practice helps your mind become more comfortable with English. Every reflection strengthens your fluency. And every conversation brings you closer to natural communication. So continue practicing, continue exploring your thoughts, and continue speaking with patience and curiosity. Because language learning is not just about mastering words. It is about discovering new ways to express yourself and new ways to connect with the world. As we continue toward the final part of this lesson, take a moment to notice something important. The way you think about English may already be changing. At the beginning, speaking English might have felt like translating ideas word by word, but with practice, something different begins to happen. Your thoughts start forming directly in English, slowly, naturally, and with more confidence. This change does not happen suddenly. It happens little by little, every time you listen, every time you speak, and every time you allow your thoughts to flow in English. Fluent speakers do not force their sentences. They allow their ideas to appear naturally. They speak with patience, and they trust that their words will come. For example, imagine someone asks you a reflective question like, what advice would you give to someone learning English? You might say something thoughtful, like, one piece of advice I would give is to practice regularly, even if it is only for a few minutes each day, because consistency builds confidence. Or perhaps, I would encourage learners to stay patient with themselves, because learning a language is a gradual journey. These answers sound calm, natural, and encouraging. Let's practice giving advice together. Imagine someone says, I feel nervous speaking English. You might respond, it's completely normal to feel nervous at first, but the more you practice, the more comfortable you will become. Or perhaps, the key is to focus on communication rather than perfection. Advice like this sounds supportive and thoughtful. Another important habit of advanced speakers is sharing personal reflections about growth. People often talk about how their mindset changed during learning. For example, you might say, over time, I realized that learning a language is not about speed. It is about consistency. Or perhaps, I came to understand that every small improvement matters. Let's practice describing personal reflection. You might say, one thing I learned during my journey is that patience creates progress. Or maybe, I discovered that regular practice helps build confidence. These reflections show awareness and maturity. Another skill in advanced English is expressing encouragement for the future. Fluent speakers often speak about what learners can achieve with time and dedication. For example, you might say, if you continue practicing, you will eventually notice significant improvement. Or perhaps, with patience and effort, fluency becomes achievable. Let's practice expressing encouragement. You might say, every step you take brings you closer to your goal. Or maybe, progress may feel slow sometimes, but every effort matters. These encouraging words create motivation. Another feature of advanced English is describing the beauty of communication itself. Language is not only about vocabulary, it is about connection, understanding, and sharing ideas. For example, you might say, one of the most beautiful things about language is the ability to connect with people. Or perhaps, communication allows us to share thoughts, emotions, and experiences. Let's practice describing the value of language. You might say, language creates opportunities to, I understand different perspectives. Or maybe, through language, we discover new cultures and ideas. These reflections sound meaningful and inspiring. Another powerful habit of fluent speakers is describing gratitude for the learning journey. Even challenges become valuable experiences. For example, you might say, I'm grateful for every challenge that helped me grow. Or perhaps, I appreciate the journey of learning because it teaches patience. Let's practice expressing gratitude. You might say, I feel thankful for the opportunity to learn something new. Or maybe, I appreciate the progress that comes from effort. These thoughts create a positive mindset. Another important skill is describing hope for continued improvement. Fluent speakers often talk about the future with optimism. For example, you might say, I hope to continue improving my English every day. Or perhaps, I look forward to having more meaningful conversations in English. Let's practice expressing hope. You might say, I look forward to communicating confidently in many situations. Or maybe, I hope to keep learning and growing through language. These expressions sound hopeful and inspiring. As we slowly reach the end of this long conversation together, take a moment to reflect on everything you practiced. Throughout this lesson, you explored how to expand ideas, how to explain experiences, how to describe feelings, and how to share thoughts clearly. All of these habits are part of advanced English, not because the words are difficult, but because the ideas flow naturally and meaningfully. Fluency grows when you practice expressing your thoughts calmly, when you allow your sentences to develop naturally, and when you speak with confidence rather than fear. Remember that every learner progresses at their own pace. Some days you may feel very confident, and other days you may feel uncertain, but both experiences are part of the journey. What truly matters is continuing forward, continuing to practice, and continuing to believe that improvement is possible. Every conversation you have, every sentence you speak, and every idea you express brings you closer to fluent communication. So keep exploring the language, keep speaking with curiosity, and keep enjoying the learning process. Because the ability to express your thoughts in another language is not only a skill, it is also a bridge that connects people, cultures, and ideas. And with patience, dedication, and daily practice, that bridge becomes stronger and stronger. Thank you for spending this time practicing English together. And remember, every step forward is progress. Now let's continue practicing advanced English by exploring how people describe everyday thoughts that appear during normal daily life. Because real fluency is not only about prepared sentences, it is also about expressing spontaneous ideas that appear naturally in your mind. Sometimes during the day, you might notice a small moment and quietly reflect on it. For example, imagine you finish a task you have been working on for a long time. You might think, it's satisfying to see how something slowly comes together after consistent effort. Or perhaps, after completing something important, you might say, there is a special kind of calm that appears when a task is finally finished. These simple reflections are very natural. In fluent English, let's practice expressing thoughts about daily experiences. Imagine you are walking outside in the evening and you notice the quiet atmosphere around you. You might say, the evening feels peaceful and the calm atmosphere makes it easier to relax after a long day. Or perhaps, there is something comforting about quiet moments at the end of the day. These types of sentences sound calm, thoughtful, and natural. Another useful advanced speaking skill is describing how people manage their time and attention. Many conversations include discussions about focus and priorities. For example, you might say, I've realized that focusing on one task at a time helps me work more effectively. Or perhaps, when I organize my time carefully, the day feels more balanced. Let's practice describing time management. You might say, I should try to plan my tasks in advance so that the day feels more organized. Or maybe, I find that small moments of planning can make a big difference. These expressions sound practical and reflective. Another habit of fluent speakers is describing moments when they pause and appreciate simple experiences. Life often moves quickly, but sometimes people notice the beauty of small moments. For example, you might say, sometimes the most peaceful moments of the day are the quietest ones. Or perhaps, I enjoy the calm feeling that appears when everything slows down. Let's practice describing appreciation for small moments. You might say, there is something relaxing about taking a few minutes to breathe and reflect. Or maybe, I appreciate simple moments when everything feels calm and clear. These expressions help conversations feel warm and meaningful. Another advanced speaking habit is describing personal observations about life and learning. Fluent speakers often share insights that come from their experiences. For example, you might say, I've noticed that progress usually happens gradually rather than suddenly. Or perhaps, I've observed that confidence grows through repetition and practice. Let's practice describing an observation. You might say, I've noticed that people become more confident when they practice regularly. Or maybe, I've realized that patience is one of the most valuable qualities in learning. These reflections sound thoughtful and insightful. Another useful skill in advanced English is expressing calm confidence about the future. Fluent speakers often talk about the future in a hopeful but realistic way. For example, you might say, I believe that, with continued practice, improvement will naturally follow. Or perhaps, I feel confident that consistent effort will lead to progress. Let's practice expressing confidence about the future. You might say, I believe that every day of practice strengthens my skills. Or maybe, I trust that patience and dedication will lead to success. These ideas create a calm and optimistic tone. Another important habit in advanced English is describing the satisfaction of learning itself. Many learners discover that the process of learning becomes enjoyable. For example, you might say, there is a quiet satisfaction in realizing that something which once felt difficult has become easier. Or perhaps, the learning process itself can be deeply rewarding. Let's practice describing satisfaction. You might say, I enjoy the feeling of understanding. There's something new. Or maybe, I appreciate the sense of progress that comes with practice. These expressions show appreciation for growth. Another powerful element of advanced speaking is expressing calm encouragement toward yourself and others. Encouragement helps maintain motivation. For example, you might say, every small step forward deserves recognition. Or perhaps, even slow progress is still progress. Let's practice expressing encouragement. You might say, keep practicing and confidence will grow naturally. Or maybe, each effort contributes to improvement. These statements sound supportive and motivating. Another habit fluent speakers develop is describing awareness of the learning journey. Many people become more aware of how they learn and grow. For example, you might say, looking back, I can see how each stage of a learning helped me improve. Or perhaps, the journey of learning often teaches us more than the final result. Let's practice describing awareness. You might say, I've become more aware of how patience helps progress. Or maybe, I understand now that learning is a gradual process. These thoughts show self-awareness and maturity. Another useful skill is describing quiet confidence in communication. Fluent speakers eventually reach a point where speaking feels natural and comfortable. For example, you might say, over time, speaking English has started to feel more natural. Or perhaps, I feel more comfortable expressing my thoughts than I did before. Let's practice describing growing comfort. You might say, with regular practice, my confidence continues to grow. Or maybe, I feel more relaxed when sharing my ideas in English. These expressions reflect real progress. As you continue practicing advanced English, remember that communication becomes powerful when your thoughts flow naturally. You don't need complicated words to sound advanced. What truly matters is clarity, calmness, and the ability to express your ideas honestly. Every time you describe an experience, share a reflection, or explain a thought, your fluency becomes stronger. And as your confidence grows, you will notice something remarkable. English will begin to feel less like a foreign language and more like another natural way to express who you are. Thank you so much for spending this time learning and practicing English with me today. I truly appreciate that you chose to sit down, relax, and grow your English step by step. If you stayed with me through this entire lesson, you should feel proud of yourself because listening carefully, thinking in English, and practicing new expressions for this long already shows real dedication. And dedication is one of the most powerful ingredients in language learning. Remember, speaking advanced English is not about using complicated words. It is about expressing your ideas clearly, calmly, and naturally. It is about sharing your thoughts, describing your experiences, and connecting with people through meaningful communication. Every sentence you practice, every conversation you have, and every moment you spend listening to English helps your brain become more comfortable with the language. Progress might sometimes feel slow, but little by little, day by day, your confidence will continue to grow. So keep practicing, keep listening, and most importantly, keep speaking whenever you have the opportunity. Even simple conversations can help you become more fluent because fluency grows through use, not through perfection. If you enjoyed learning English in this calm and natural way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you can continue practicing with new lessons and improve your English a little more every day. I'm really glad you joined me for this lesson, and I hope to see you again in the next one. Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep believing in your progress.